This now brings us to part 7 of the history of God. Where we last left off, Hitler was prevented from conquering the civilized world. And this brings us to the beginning of a new age. Even with such major atrocities in our world, the belief in God still remained what anyone decided that it was. And thus we enter the time of modern age. This now brings us to our current time in history. As before, every side believes that God is on their side, no matter who they are or what they stand for. Currently, we have trouble in the Middle East, which believes they are fighting for their God-given right to be free of Western influence. We also have the West, who believe they are bringing the Word of God to these godless people, proclaiming that it is done in the name of democracy. Both have convinced themselves that their way is right, just, and the only acceptable way. What's missing is that none of it has anything to do with the people. The people are only told what their various leaders want them to know or believe. As the saying goes, the first casualty in war is always the truth. Each side is told that God and righteousness is on their side. How can God be on both sides when the two sides are so completely opposite? Just as before, God is whatever anyone decides that it is, and can be used in any way that they want to. There is no truth in God, and hasn't been for thousands of years. God is whatever those in power at the time decide that it is, and it moves, bends, and shapes by those ideas alone. As has been the case since ancient times, God is used as a means to control the people and make them do whatever those in power decide they should. If you want to get into heaven, you will be obedient children and do as your betters tell you. No debate allowed on the subject. Currently, there is a huge war occurring in our world, one that most people don't even realize, one for who owns God. The winner gets to decide what God is, and the prize is the obedience of the people. This war is waged by telling the people that their very beliefs are in jeopardy. This has been done by convincing the people that God is being destroyed by non-believers and that they'll lose their right to believe in God if they lose this war. Thus, the religious have begun to attack science, deciding that science is undermining the existence of God. Why, you might ask, is God so fragile as to be undone by science, especially when the origins of science came from the church itself? The answer, of course, is because it's not about God, but about power and control. The religious leaders are afraid to lose their flock, not God. The church doesn't want God. As far as they're concerned, they have him on their side. What they want is to ensure that people don't have an option to think for themselves. For if that were to occur, they might realize God isn't in the church and will leave, which will then lead to the destruction of the church. At least that's what they believe. That fear is so powerful to them that they don't want to take the chance that people will be able to think for themselves and still choose to go to church. They believe if the people think for themselves, they will leave and not come back. But why? Because it's what the church already sees happening. Vast droves of people are choosing to leave the church, choosing to turn to other things to try and find comfort and happiness, something the church blames on science, even though it actually has nothing to do with science at all. The true reason that the people are leaving the church is because they're tired of being lied to. The modern age has been built on the idea that freedom is everything, and they want their freedom. They know that God isn't in the church because the church has a massive history of godlessness. Because of the church, countless people died from the Black Death that didn't need to. The church condones its priests committing godless acts like the assault of little boys. The church preaches love thy neighbor, but preaches hatred of anyone who believes in any god other than the one they do, and more. People have begun to see the church for what it really is, an organization bent on dominating and controlling the people, all in the name of God. They know this because history has shown them this. For the first time in history, people have the ability to look back at all of known history and see things for what they really are. They can see that the belief in God has changed and been altered as each different people chose to alter God to meet their own needs. They can see how God has been warped and twisted to protect the power of the church instead of working for the true betterment of the people. People have begun to see things for what they really are because they've become educated. In all other parts of human history, a simple education was kept outside the realms of the average person. And it's exactly because of this realization that those in power made sure the people were not educated. By allowing the people to become informed, made it harder to have them believe whatever they were told. By keeping them in the dark, people were much easier to manipulate and control, something history has shown us many times. Every time the people become educated, society always changes. This now brings us to the most important thing we can do at this point: find out if there is a God. Even though the idea of God has been altered, perverted, corrupted, and whatnot, does that mean there is no such thing as God? Or does it just mean that we've been looking at the wrong idea of what God really is? I'll leave you to contemplate on that for a moment while we now progress to part 8. See you soon!